Yo, welcome to Weird Growth, the podcast where we hear the strange and often unpredictable journey that founders take. The conversation does not stop here though. If you want to stay one step ahead and unlock access to exclusive insights, thought-provoking summaries of our latest episodes, and a curated collection of valuable resources from across the web, don't miss out on our Ammo Marketing monthly newsletter. Please subscribe to our newsletter by the link in the description. This episode of Weird Growth, we are recording live at Cyberwest Summit 2024, beautiful downtown Perth at the Pan Pacific. And we have a fantastic guest who is Stefan Prandl on the pod today.
Yeah, hey.
Thanks for being here. Stefan is the CTO at Hyprfire, which is a fantastic cyber technology, cyber security tech business here in Perth.
Cybersecurity vendor technologies company, So we actually build the stuff rather than do the stuff.
Love it. And from your website, it says that you help busy IT teams with the capability to actively monitor abnormal behaviour on networks, acting as an early warning system. We'll hear plenty about that. Stefan, thank you so much for joining us on Weird Growth.
Yeah, good to be here.
Could you please introduce yourself and how have you come to do what you do with Hyprfire?
Oh, bloody hell, that is a hard question to answer. Hi, I'm Stefan. I have been at varying times a software engineer, a lecturer, a hacker, a network administrator, a systems admin. I've been trying to collect all the infinity stones of computing. I've talked at international conferences, which was completely wild when it happened. I've been to Blackout and DEF CON.
Wow.
I swear, that's like it was bizarre because I was like 25 when it happened, and I was like, man, this was like on my bucket list. Now what do I do? So naturally, I started a business.
Brilliant. Good on you. Correct answer.
But so as to how I got here, man, if I could answer that in a short way, that would make my life a lot easier because I look at my friends who are out obviously doing industry stuff, just doing the sort of things that you do as a fairly wacky tech dude, and I'm like, so I'm actually running a business, guys. So how I got there is so I decided that I would be very cool and definitely not waste my time in a dramatic fashion and decide to do a PhD.
Yep.
Which is is definitely a thing.
Yep.
And during that, I discovered some really, really bizarre and interesting mathematics about how networks function, and specifically figured out a way of applying them in a way that you could actually use it to find bad stuff happening in networks in a way that no one had really done before, and no one really had any idea on how to do before. So, suddenly finding yourself in a space where you're asking on Google, why is this the case? And there is nothing because no one knows. It was pretty wild. And then the very next thing that happened was, I was talking to my supervisor about it, and he's like, we should probably commercialize this. So let's get commercialization involved. And of course, me being the sort of person that when someone puts an idea in my head or something in front of me and says, solve it, I kind of kept going with that until eventually I was, a CTO of a startup. So I was like, oh, well, that was interesting. Now I've been down that journey.
Huge. That's incredible.
That's basically how I'm here.
How would you just, if I imagine I'm 5 and my technical understanding is probably about that out of a 5-year-old, what is that discovery that you made?
Thank you for asking. As a PhD student, I will talk about this for friggin' ever. But
you get 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Right. Cool. So if you take a book, any book you like, and you open it up and you start counting the words in the book by the number of times they appear, right, you'll find that the is the most popular word, right? The second most popular word will be half as many times as the third most popular word a third, so on and so forth. This is called Zipf's law. It's this weird law that just exists everywhere. Number of stars in galaxies, number of likes on Facebook, number of followers on X. I always say Twitter, but X.
Yep.
All over the place, right? This is also used for financial fraud detection.
Okay.
Because turns out humans are really bad at pure random, and this is a cool side channel into figuring out if you're doing pure random properly. So finances are essentially pure random, as it turns out. But humans that are trying to mess it up, say, I don't know, Enron, for example, can't do it well, even though they think they are.
Okay.
That same fraud detection technology, or a technique essentially, can be used to detect fraud inside computer communications. Except when it's fraud inside computer communications, it's not fraud, it's someone doing something really odd, which happens to be what you're looking for when you're looking for bad guys. So it's a behavioral technique as well. So it actually doesn't look for a particular type of malware. It's looking for someone doing something that they shouldn't due to whatever reason. And it's ludicrously fast and effective.
Wow.
It was really bizarre. Like when I saw it work the first time in like an actual computer, I was like, oh my God, what have I built? Incredible,
fascinating, and well done for taking that research and turning that into and commercializing it and turning it into a business. That's really cool, and that's what we want to see more of that, and more researchers encouraged to do more of that.
I agree with that. Like I think a lot of research happens and then it just stays as like in a paper somewhere, and some of it's really, really cool and would actually be really, really effective if used just in industry for a lot of things. But yeah, it's not something that I think it occurs to many PhD students that they can actually do. And I don't think some of them, I think some of them are particularly interested in staying in research, fair enough, but I don't think they actually think, well, what if I actually took this and made it into something?
Yeah, get out of the lab and into the real world and help some people out. With what you're building. That's so cool. I have a little pop quiz for you, if that's okay. On Weird Growth, we like to ask, if you were to start a brand new enterprise from scratch today, theoretically, what would it be, and who would you be helping?
Oh, brand new today, based on I've thought about this one. So one of the big problems we have in cybersecurity, especially, is that in the cybersecurity field, everything's basically geared towards really, really big companies, right?
Enterprise.
And big enterprise, right? To the point to which there's like a whole class of solutions that just don't even bother if you're not in Fortune 500. They're just like, no, you can't afford us, and you're not going to. And those things are effective, and they work. So one of the things that I've thought about while going through this journey and seeing things happen is, we've got a lot of small businesses that have common sort of cybersecurity problems. And there's a couple of organizations that have tried to build frameworks for them to work on. I'm like, why don't you just build a subscription-based service that runs like a SOC for just like 150 to 200 to 1,000, so on, small businesses, right? You help deal with the problem that small businesses are just getting scammed all the time because people are just sending them phishing emails and willy-nilly calling them and stuff. And you also help larger businesses and, of course, critical infrastructure in general, which is what the bad guys want to take out, by basically plugging holes in their security chain further up the river, basically, because the small businesses are who these larger companies use to supply their stuff, and of course that's where the bad guys get in.
That's those attack vectors, the weaker links down the chain.
They know that those guys can't afford anything, and they also know they're two people, and they also know they're really stressed. So if they push on that stress a bit harder, they can get them to do some really dumb stuff. And they can use that to get into the larger organization via something that the large organization trusts. So being able to help that, I think, would be a really, really interesting thing that we currently don't have in the space.
Absolutely. I mean, it's running a small business myself, I know it's definitely not very high on the priorities. Is thinking about all the what ifs and the risk mitigation and things, because we've been running a long time and it's never been a problem to date. And I think that's always been a challenge of selling cybersecurity products in general. It's just like, well, it's not a problem until it is a problem.
Yeah, and
that's it's not something I'm going to go and proactively solve until I need to, right?
Well, yeah, as a small business, right, your primary goal is to stay in business, and you do that by making revenue and ideally profit. This is a cost center. It's always a cost center. It's like insurance, right? You need it, or something bad will eventually happen, but it's not something that you really want to do, and it's not something that you have a ton of money for. And so, the idea of I've seen it done in the US, where they've got these sort of community co-op sort of cybersecurity centers where they've got the capabilities of an enterprise class SOC, and they've just got 1,000 small businesses signed up to it. And they just manage all of their security, and the businesses are paying $25 a month for it.
Yeah,
so it's it's great.
It makes sense for them, but at scale, it makes sense for the provider too. I suppose most small business owners would just be looking to trust the products that they're owning. If I'm running a cloud software Xero and running Microsoft products and things and Windows, I just have to kind of trust that those built-in cybersecurity products are doing the job for me. Yeah. But there's obviously so many other things to consider.
There's a lot of looking into it and making sure the configuration's set up properly and going, this is probably the more secure way of running it. And again, that's knowledge that you need to get out of an expert. So again, having a centralized service for that would be, I think, would be really, really good.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing that. You're about to speak here at Cyberwest on augmentations with generative AI.
Oh, yes.
Can you give us some brief insights, a little sneak peek into what you're going to be speaking about?
All right. So this has been my pet thing that I've run into because before I got into cyber, I was doing AI. I really wanted to get into AI research. And I was told at like a critical stage by a supervisor, don't go into AI research alone, because if you go into academic AI research, and this was in like 2016, you won't get to touch anything fun because you have to be working with OpenAI or Google or Microsoft. And I was like, oh, that sucks. So I got into cybersecurity because you can at least use AI here.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan of it. I know how all of the technologies work. I've built my own from scratch, quite a few things, simply because it's fun, and I find it really, really fascinating. But one of the problems that I have with what's happening right now is we're currently going through an AI summer, which is to say that there is incredible, mind-blowing hype about what's going on with these generative AI things that they cannot live up to. Right, they can do some things, and they are useful. Like I use them all the time. Right?
Yeah,
like,
likewise.
I don't write particularly well. I've got dysgraphia, so I can't write. It's difficult for me to use fine motor skills, and the ability to just like talk into Whisper and then have that piped into GPT and then that spit out something is just like, yeah, okay, now I can actually get something done.
It's getting close to magic.
Yeah, but like you've got people who are out here selling like, oh, this will just replace like your entire cybersecurity SOC junior team. And it's like, no, because these things being wrong is actually a feature of the fact that they can do different stuff.
What do you mean by that?
The hallucinations problem.
Okay.
Right? So hallucinations is sort of talked about at the moment that you can actually solve it. The fact that these things don't just spit out the same text that you put into them is because they have some sort of leeway. But that's because it's all probabilities based. And all probability curves allow you to be anywhere on that curve.
Right.
And some of those are things that just weren't actually in the original text, which to a system that's designed to just take some text and turn it into more text is just some text. But to us, and specifically to people asking it questions, that's wrong. And if you're using that as a system to actually vet stuff for like security, where it's all heavily policy and nuance-based, that's creating a lot more work for these engineers that, or the senior engineers, that the junior engineers can actually be trained not to do because they're human and they're looking for things that are right or wrong as opposed to things that look like a, thing that you could predict coming out of it.
Yep.
And it's like, I would love to see these things used properly. I would love to see these things used effectively and continue to be used. But the nature of AI summers is that if you have organizations that are sending out massive amounts of hype, because this happened a few times before, what ends up happening is people go, oh, it didn't fulfill all of your wild promises, therefore it's useless. And it's not. Like, we still have expert systems. Those things are really, really useful. But they also promised that those things were going to turn into Skynet. That's why we had the Terminator movies, which just, it's not going to happen. And one of the things that I really want to get across to people is like, yeah, this thing is close to magic, but it's math. It's not understanding what it's getting all taught. It's just predicting.
That's the P in GPT.
Yes. Predictive, which is very important because it's very different to actually speaking, to actually being in a podcast, right? Like to any of this sort of stuff. We're doing something very different to what those things do.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying there is the end users of these products need to probably have a little bit of a reality lens put over what they're using here. This isn't perfect. Will it ever be perfect?
It depends on what you're trying to make it do. For what it's very good at, which is taking like a medium and turning it into another medium, right? So GPT 4.0 has just come out, and that thing can do some really, really cool stuff with taking text, turning it into voice, taking voice, turning it into text, video, and so on. That's awesome, because that means you can search by all of those things. You can go into a space and convert between them, and say you're dyslexic and you're trying to learn, you got a textbook. Well, now you just pipe that textbook into, GPT-0, and not only is it going to just read it out to you, it's going to read it out to you with emphasis because it's able to pick the emphasis out of the words, which is great. Like that is a really useful thing to actually help people that have difficulties, right? Again, I've got dysgraphia. It's great for me being able to talk to things. But, what I don't want to see it being used for are things where the use case is something where it's not actually going to be able to be 100% perfect. And it's where someone believes that it should be something 100% perfect.
It needs to be mission critical.
I feel like people using it in search is a dangerous proposition, not because the search engine thing is actually bad, because my God, these things are effective at finding the right articles because of the way they work. But when people are using it specifically to get it to answer a question from them, it's reading the text from the pages and it might not actually give them the right answer. And I've fallen for it and gone, oh yeah, this is what I need to do something, and then go, oh, wait, hang on, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't appear in any of the pages that it's read. And because it's so convincing, because it's got really, really good mastery of language, because that's what it's designed to do. Our brains take language as a side channel for, an indicator of intelligence. And we also take intelligence as an indicator of trust. Right. So necessarily we trust it really strongly. And I know this cognitively. I still fall for it.
Yeah, sure.
But most people don't know that. And that's, I don't really want to throw a massive reality check and splash water in their face or anything, but I just want people to, know that these things are tools as opposed to God in the machine. And that if someone's out there trying to sell it to them with, hey, this thing is going to be, the next thing is going to just do everything for us and be perfect, that person's probably doing more harm to the actual AI industry than anyone thinks they are. That person's probably the bad guy.
When it comes to cyber, what are some of the use cases that these tools can have which are useful? Which
no, absolutely. So because this thing is able to take certain kinds of data and then overlay it into a space where that data has association with different kinds of data, right? So it's like the wonderful embedding spaces they build. You can essentially get things that are series of events, series of different things that come out in logs that are just that's some logs, whatever.
Yep.
But in that sequence, those kinds of events can match up with a certain kind of context, i.e., this is what that actually means, right? Now, again, is that going to be 100% correct? No, but if you do it in the way of centauring, where you get a human and you put an AI in their hands and say, you do your job, the AI is going to give you suggestions based on that information, right? That's wild. I've got something similar that I do inside a note-taking tool called Obsidian that I currently have.
Okay.
And that thing will actually give me suggestions from other notes that I've taken. Huh. So if I'm writing some notes about a meeting from another, for a meeting with a client, it'll find notes from similar stuff in other client meetings and be like, oh, do you want to ask this?
That's cool.
That's exactly what you can do with this sort of AI for cybersecurity tools. What you don't want to do with them is go, I'm going to replace my entire cybersecurity team with one of these things, because then you're going to need a cybersecurity team whose job it is to babysit the bot.
Sam Altman was on the All In podcast on Friday talking about, and this was just before GPT-4o came out, speaking about how he envisaged these tools to be used alongside humans. And they sort of asked him, so is it going to be like an agent where it's sort of almost like a digital copy of you as an individual? And he said, no, I don't really see it being like that. I see it being like a very competent senior team member. Someone who's able to make proactive suggestions based on my past behaviour and what my tendencies are, but also give me a little bit of pushback and say, yes, I could go and do that suggestion for you. However, here's how I see that playing out. Maybe you might like to suggest it. So maybe you like to do something different.
I sort of see it as I think Microsoft's name for Copilot was an excellent name. I'm not entirely sure they're using it quite that way at this point. They'll work on it. They'll get somewhere with it. But the idea that it is something that sits alongside you and actually has a different viewpoint on it, right? Because we're human. We do things through really, again, through anomaly detection and pattern matching that we don't really understand, because that's why psychology is still just a broad and open science. But these computer things look at things from a very different perspective.
Unemotionally.
Yeah, well, they don't have, or they've got biases and everything else built into them. But of course, sometimes you can train those biases, right? If I'm a security nut, I want the thing to be biased towards, ooh, could this possibly be this? And then I want the engineer to look at that and go, how could it not be that? Probably isn't that because of this and this, right? But the fact is you have to ask the question now. He's gone, oh, okay, I need to actually think about whether or not this was the thing, because there's indicators that it might be. Yeah. So I need to double check. And that sort of things where I think this is very useful is that, we have an ability now to connect information in a way that we can make it readily, available to people at the time that they need it, in the format that they need it, based on the context that they're in. So that sort of usage of it to, convert one set of data into another set of data that a human can actually use, I think is the core of what this thing ends up doing.
Let's talk about Hyprfire.
Oh, heck yeah.
What's the crux of the problem that you're solving?
Oh, man.
Hyprfire?
So cybersecurity has this wonderful, wonderful problem where humans are the target, right? We get phished. We're the worst weakness because we can't we can't patch our brains, right? We just can't. I don't know what Neuralink's going to do about that, but we can't. Now the trick is that if someone gets past the humans or through the humans or whatever the heck they do, you then need to have some other way of basically going, well, now that they've gotten past them, where are they and what are they doing? So we have this whole thing called visibility. And visibility has this thing called the visibility triad. nice little triangle with like 3 points in the center. And the points are, you've got to have perimeter visibility, which is firewalls really. You need to have endpoint visibility, which is like antivirus and smart antivirus and like AI-based antivirus, very cool. Then you've got network-based visibility, which is a thing called NDR, and that's where we sort of sit. And you've got SIEM/XDR, which can sometimes do multiple points in the triangle. And that's basically to take all of the information in and put it in a central sort of space for the engineers to get to so they can look at it and go, that's what's happening on my network. The problem is that NDR is such a hard space because everything happens on networks, right? All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, everything your clients are doing, everything your workers are doing, and everything the bad guys are doing. Mm-hmm. Ideally, if you could just figure out where the bad guy was, you'd know exactly what they're doing at all times. But finding that needle in that planet-sized haystack in any given business where the entire network's different and everything everyone does is different all the time is wildly difficult. Okay. So there's been lots and lots of attempts of it. There's been an AI-based attempt, like there was a whole Generation 2 thing they came through and they built these massive neural network models to try and understand how networks worked. And that kind of works, but it's like, it only works under really specific situations because it's one of the worst use cases for neural networks because they don't know what normal looks like. Yeah. And they're sort of saying, if we throw the model in and it comes up with a normal, well, that was the normal in your network. And it's like, well, I don't even know what that was. It could just be you figured out what the bad guys do and go, oh, that's normal. Yeah, and now anything my staff are doing is like, so that's, the problem is that in order to actually fix that, you need to have someone who knows how to train neural networks. And I mean, how many enterprise businesses have like an AI specialist on hand?
Not
right?
us.
No one has that. So the Fortune 500, Fortune 200 are basically, those are the guys that can run these systems. But that system, like, the Medibank hack and the Latitude hack, where basically these bad guys got onto their network and then used the very tools that they used to manage those networks, like manage the Latitude network, manage the Medibank network, to move around, encrypt data, steal stuff, and then do terrible things with it.
Jeez.
That is only really detectable with the network bit there, because the network bit's job is to look at the behavior of what's going on. And even though all of the tools are whitelisted, because there's stuff that people actually use in the business, so the EDR goes, yeah, that's fine. And even though they're coming in over web connection, like a HTTPS connection that everyone uses for like everything, because that's what everything runs now. Even though everything else looks at it and goes, yeah, look, that's probably okay. The NDR looks at it and goes, but the behavior, man, why is Steve in accounting trying to like ream through all of the stuff in the, the customer database? What the hell's going on there? That is why you have these kinds of breaches happen. It's because that visibility doesn't exist. And so organizations either have a really bad, cheap version that they can't man because they just don't have any people to do it and they don't have experts for it, or they have a wildly expensive one that they can't train. So we sort of sit as like a solution that is based on the new technology that I came up with, which makes it a lot faster, a lot more lightweight. You can deploy it on basically a laptop or a phone, right? Something that sort of scale.
Wow.
And so, which is, again, you're talking about neural network things. There are companies that sell like graphics card server arrays, and they go, yeah, that's what you run your network detection and response system on. So you got to pay for that.
Wow.
And then the license. Whereas we're like, yeah, if you got a laptop, you're good.
Yeah, awesome.
And we also provide a service wrapped around it where we've actually got like real crack network threat hunters, and all they do day in, day out is take our customer data and just go, what could the bad guys be up to? What's in here that shouldn't be here? And we find all sorts of stuff. We find people have misconfigured things all over the place because they just don't know. And the only place you can see it is from the network. And we find, sysadmins breaking their own policy because, they want to run a torrent server inside their own environment. And they're the sysadmin. They own the computers. They're fine. And it's like, no, that's actually against your business policy. You're fired.
Yeah.
But again, the business is going to know because the sysadmin set up everything else, right? The network's going to tell them because, well, our guys are doing that visibility for them, and we're going to go, why is there a torrent server running in this machine? So, we do that. We provide the information in something that's easy for them to action because we've got a human basically writing the final report, or at least editing it. And then that allows much, much smaller businesses, like, we're talking at the moment medium sort of size scale stuff. We've got everything from state government through to like local government, through to education, through to manufacturing, not massive enterprise businesses, but businesses that actually need this, and some of them that do get hit pretty often. They now have the ability to actually see stuff they otherwise can't. And we've actually saved a bunch of businesses' asses by just being able to go, what is that? And then they've gone, we don't know. And then they have a look and they're like, oh my God, someone's compromised something. Oh,
Crikey.
Jesus. So
It's brilliant. That's the outcome you want.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like the best bit about what we do is that when it works, we're able to basically save someone from being a front line, like a front, of the newspaper sort of
that's
thing. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Can we talk a little bit about the way that you commercialized your, basically how you turned what you had discovered into a business? How did you, what was the process like to take that and then start trying to give it to customers, essentially? How did you find those first customers?
This was like a really, really great experience. I loved this because when I started, I was kind of like, okay, so you get a cool idea and then something happens and now you're selling it to people. I'm like, how big could that possibly be? And now I find that it's like, you're basically walking out into the Sahara and you get to trek across the Sahara, and on the other side, that's where you're selling to customers. Because you can't just go in and go, here's a thing, go. As obviously learned the hard way.
Right.
So the very first thing that happened was I had to actually build something that was a product as opposed to just a tech demo. Mm-hmm. And so I built the first version by hand. And then we needed to figure out how to actually demo it, right? And this took a long time because because it's a very technical field, it was really difficult to find the right partners inside Curtin itself. Like the Curtin commercialization guys are great and they were really enthusiastic about it, but they were just kind of like, I don't know how we get a proper business case around this to really like build some sort of trial or something. So they're trying to incubate it, but they weren't really sure what to do. So it was like in all kinds of things, like it was in the accelerate stuff and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
And eventually, I met my co-founder Tim. And he kind of got it and was like, oh my God, we can just build this. We can take this thing that you've built, add some bits, and then just go out to an organization and just go, hey, we'll do free monitoring for you for 3 months. All we ask is that you just trial it. And maybe if we're doing really good, you might put in some money for it afterwards, right?
Nice. So just the free pilot.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And
awesome.
So and the crazy thing was it started right around when COVID hit. So we ended up with like a 9-month pilot simply because they couldn't pull it out because they were in lockdown.
Yeah.
Which was awesome because we got so much data out of it. And it was me running the whole thing. I was running it. I was trying to figure out how to render data in ways that people could understand. I was writing the reports and everything. And then that turned into, basically that worked really, really well. And that ended up turning into one of them turned into one of our first customers.
Yep. How do you convince an organisation to go, hey, there's these guys down at the university, they want to put some...
Oh, man.
Want to try something out on your business?
It's insanely hard. So in our case, we basically found like this the CIO who is like really forward thinking. And he was basically like, I know there's stuff I'm missing and I don't have a way of being able to just try stuff. And I rock up and have a chat with him and I'm like, this is probably what you're missing. And he's like, that does sound like something I'm missing. I want to try it. And then, after we did some just initial sort of stuff, gave him some information, his own tech team go to him and they're like, this, like not even a security team, it's like IT, management team go, this thing is giving us information on our own environment that we don't have. And it's making our lives easier. Can you please grab it? And he's like, well, that's exactly what I wanted to see.
You got to find someone who is feeling that pain point.
Yeah. It's like you got to find the pain point. You've also got to find the people who are willing to take a roll of the dice with it.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Because anyone can feel the pain pinch, but if they're sitting there and they're like, yeah, but I don't want to have something worse happen, then they're probably not the person. Yeah. Whereas this guy's like, I know I'm looking for something, but I'm also willing to give it a shot, right? Because I want to try anything, right? It can't possibly be that bad if it goes wrong, right? I think, because obviously me and my team internally, we trial a whole bunch of new stuff all the time. I think that sort of viewpoint to trying different innovative strategies, even if those aren't from inside your own organization, is like, that's the sort of thing you're hunting for in that sort of initial stage.
So you're looking for potential customers who also have almost that cultural fit with your organisation. Yeah, great. Yeah. When did you realise, hey, this is getting serious, like we're really onto something here?
That happened right around the first time we got our first international customer.
Right.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So that happened. Oh, that was really wild. We went to RSA with one of the Austrade delegations, right? So RSA is the biggest cybersecurity industrial conference in the world. It runs, it's actually finished recently this year, runs over in San Fran.
Wow.
And we went there and we met a whole bunch of like Australian companies, as you do.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought it was really funny that we had to travel halfway around the world to meet other Australian companies that we work well
classic.
with. So we ended up making some partnerships, and this guy's like, one of these guys that we were working with, he's like, look, I've got some customers in New Zealand that have some problems, but obviously deploying it all the way out there is going to be a pain. So I'd like to trial you with one of their local sort of things here in, at the time of his, Sydney.
Yep.
Right? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, we can do that. We managed to find so many things that were wrong with their network, and they were trying desperately to figure out why they'd been hit like multiple times. And so we were just like, here's all the problems. And they went, we need this in all of our sites. And so suddenly we were like, oh, okay, now we just need to get this shipped out to New Zealand. And I'm like, huh. So before this, I've got a couple of clients in Australia, and most of them are in Perth, and it's all very cool and cute and stuff. And now I've got people that I'm probably never going to meet using this over in another country. And when I go and tell people, when people come and ask me, hey, so where are your customers? I no longer say, oh, there's just a couple here in Australia. I'm like, well, we're actually international.
As closely international as you can get to Australia.
It's across the ditch.
That's
But
great.
it's like,
how did that feel in that moment?
it was just like, as every major milestone in this whole thing, it was just kind of like, if I went back to like, me even at the beginning of uni, even at the beginning of my PhD, and just be like, look, buddy, in a couple of years, this is where you're going to be. I'm not entirely sure my previous self would have believed me.
Sure.
I think they would have been like, pull the other one.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's not where I saw myself where I would be, right? Like I thought, I know some stuff. I'm pretty good with tech. I can probably make things work really well. I'd be really great inside a team somewhere. I didn't think I would be creating jobs. I didn't think I would be building the team. I didn't think I would be building technologies and telling people, hey, this will help you, and then helping them, right? Like, it's wild.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? Well, congratulations. Like, that's just
Thanks.
fantastic. And especially from, doing it from Perth too.
Yeah.
What did you do to grow it from there? From that?
Yeah, so inside cyber specifically, there is a really, really good method of growth through partnerships, right? And we figured that out pretty early on. I'd figured that out by watching other companies, right? There's a big one called, it was called Alien Vault, and it was acquired by AT&T. But Alien Vault basically would scale by just going into partner companies and going, look, we've got a really good partnership program. If you sell us into all of your medium-sized businesses, we'll solve a whole bunch of problems for them. It'll be affordable for them, and you'll make, as you get volume sales, more and more of the actual profit.
Okay.
And looking at how that was so much more broadly spread than, say, Splunk, which is like doing direct partner-to-partner sales or B2B sales, it was kind of like, okay, well, we need partners. What other kinds of partners can we have beyond just a sales company that is selling tech to companies, like an integrator or something? And so we've got this classic sort of like managed security service provider sort of thing where they do some service and we assist.
Yep.
But we've done stuff like, all right, cool. How do we do technology partnerships? Right? Can we help someone who's got a technology that has a network in it and they need to do security for it? And of course, that organization has like a massive customer base, for example. They've got a problem. Their customers know the problem's there because they're the ones asking for the solution. They can't do it because they don't have the technical expertise, but our solution is so incredibly small and flexible that we can just kind of live in that space. And also, we now have access to information inside organization networks that gives you just this incredibly rich understanding of what's going on inside their organization. What can we tell businesses and say, hey, look, if you did X, you would be able to do this so much more efficiently. Or, hey, we've noticed that you don't encrypt Y. Did you know that this is a problem? It may not be a problem now, but if you do that now, it's about a 2-hour job. And if a bad guy gets to it, if you don't do it, you're kind of screwed, right? We're like, yeah, we could kind of like do this, but we don't want to do this directly. Can we find a consultancy company that we can basically support them with? And yeah, we've been going down these paths. It's been really great. We've been calling like different verticals that we're targeting. Yep. And it's sort of like, we have this information and this skill set and this expertise. Who else can we actually help? Thinking just outside the box of like, we sell a product.
Yeah, beautiful. So you're leveraging those partners who already have direct access and the trust and the relationship with the customers, the end users, And so it's actually probably a nicer sales process for you guys because you get to relate to people who already get what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's actually quite a big part of it. The other big part of it, as you've said and correctly picked up on, is trust. Cybersecurity is very strongly trust-based. People don't buy stuff if they don't trust it. And if they've got someone that goes, hey, look, we vetted it, we think it's really cool, you should get it, and they trust those people, you're far more likely to get successful sales. Simply because they're not going to try and like look the gift horse in the mouth in a way that it's just going to take you like 6 months of just beating back questions.
Yeah, so very smart. Well done. What could possibly be next for the future?
Okay. So in a purely technical cybersecurity way, my current big target is sitting over in the space of operational technology.
What does that
mean? There's a reason for that, because operational technology is like all of the factories and manufacturing and all the way down to like building management, right?
Okay.
So like the actual like lights here will have, and the electronics stuff will have like power monitoring and stuff that like an organization can check to see if their aircon's running effectively or the lights have burnt out somewhere and they can come and fix it later. So they've got engineers to just watch it. And that's like spread over like every single Pan Pacific.
Yep.
So there's like a team that just looks at it all. So that technology is woefully undersecured to the point at which you can just like log into it by just saying, hi, I'd like to talk. And it goes, sure, buddy, which is just not great. The reason that I think that's really important is because we know from things like the war in Ukraine that big bad guys know that they can go after these things, and they know they can do things like just shut off the power or shut off the water or, do worse things than that, poison the water, right? If they get control of like water treatment plants. And that's, given the world is getting a bit more gnarly, something that I'm particularly concerned about, and I'm even more concerned about it because of the whole AUKUS Pact thing, right? We're supposed to have essentially our own internal military industrial system for building nuclear subs, right? That's a whole bunch of manufacturing that's like prime targets for certain countries to our north. That's all OT, right? Most companies that do OT are in the US. I mean, if someone goes and blows up the, fiber cables under the Pacific, how are we supposed to receive support from the US? We need to have it local. We need to have local and sovereign capabilities. And I'm like, well, we're sort of working on lightweight stuff. We can deploy in a lot of different places. I want to be able to support that kind of, really critical manufacturing and support all of the jobs and everything else that comes along with it by, giving it that sort of security that at the moment it would be relying on something completely remote and just somewhere completely different, so that we can actually have like a West Australian security solution for West Australian industrial stuff. Heck, we've got the mining companies up north that do similar sorts of stuff.
Yep.
So it's all over the place here. It's something that's like critical to how our industries work now and will into the future.
Yep.
So that's the sort of space that I'm like, that's where we need to go.
Sounds super important. Yeah, well, good on you for focusing on that. And I think most lay people who don't really understand the cyber security space, we hope and trust that our governments and big institutions are being proactive in this sort of space, because we probably don't really understand the implications if we're not.
Yeah, they do try. I'll give them that.
Yep.
The big businesses in general are pretty good at it, because they
have to be.
They look at risk very differently.
Yeah. So it comes down to dollars and cents.
Yeah, okay, we can't have the whole packs turned off because that is hugely expensive.
Right.
So they actually care. Government's getting there, but it's just a very slow beast.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of rules that they've applied to themselves, but they're still trying to actually enforce them. And they're going, we got to do X and Y. And there's a lot of at the moment trying to like just meet the bare minimum of checklists. And that's not a really great way of doing. It's like following the letter of the law, but not the spirit.
Yeah.
It's like the spirit of cybersecurity is the bad guys can also read your checklists, so they know what you've done.
Yeah.
So always have something up your sleeve. Think like any other person that's playing like a card game would do. You got to outwit your opponent, not just cover the sovereign risk, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Well, look, the thing that heartens me at least is I do see a lot of smart young people. Interested in this space, and I think it's the Signals Directorate are hiring out of that sort of cohort and things, and so it does feel like there's some cool stuff happening. To protect Australia's interests in our in our region. So that's a positive, mate. We're getting to the end, and I know you've got to go and do your talk, but I just want to ask, what is one big piece of advice you have to founders who are looking to grow?
Knowing the actual nature of the market you're trying to sell into is super, super useful. I was talking about before that partnerships are a super important way to grow inside cybersecurity. We came to that, obviously I had a hunch for it, but we actually did like a full investigation and breakdown into exactly how our private market and the public markets, like into government as well, how that worked for cybersecurity, specifically because we were like, okay, what is the actual most efficient way of doing growth?
Love that. You took an academic approach to growth. That's brilliant.
Look, again, I know math works. I know if you use it properly, it's a wildly powerful tool, but you don't have to do it mathematically. You can do it just from instead of acting and then hoping for the best, spend, a little bit of time just to ask the questions, do your research, and that will often give you an outcome that is way more effective than just sending it.
So good.
Stop before you send it. Try and aim a bit better, then send it.
Well done. Love that. Something we always wrap up Weird Growth with is a show and tell time. And we just ask our guests, what is the favourite tool, device, bit of software, toy, whatever it is in your life that you use every day that you love?
Oh man, that is a hard one. I've got so many random things. I'm that kind of person. My home network is friggin' Aladdin's cave.
I had a hunch it might
wild be. Things. At the moment, my favorite thing is there's a bunch of applications that I'll be talking about in my talk just a bit that are basically homebrew sort of large language model stuff, because you don't have as much control over, say, what ChatGPT is doing. Even though it's really good, you don't have a lot of control of why it does stuff, why it chooses not to do stuff, because that's all set by OpenAI itself. So there's this really neat, really, really awesome application called LM Studio that you can just download, and it gives you access to, it's got like a little search thing and a highlights feed of all of the open source models, and it requires no programming expertise to do, runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac. You download it, you download some models, and if you've got an Apple Mac with one of the Apple Silicon chips, you can run basically any of these things on there.
Locally?
Locally, completely locally, and it's cool. Fast.
Wow. So what's that called? LM Studio?
LM Studio.
We'll put a link to it in the notes. Very cool.
That's currently my favorite thing to use, because I literally, it emulates OpenAI's API. So you can literally take ChatGPT tools and go, yeah, I like ChatGPT doing it, but for example, I've got I've got an AI model that speaks as a stone surfy dude. So I'm like, I would love it if I could get a stone surfy dude to rewrite my code. So the comments are more stone surfy dude, right? And you can literally just take the ChatGPT, Copilot-y sort of coding app and just point it back at your laptop and just go, and it just works. It's so cool.
This line's a little bit gnarly, dude, but if you refer to line 33, check out how radical it is.
Whoa, dude, so this whole block here does some really gnarly stuff.
So good. Amazing, Stefan. Mate, thank you. Final plug and ask, if anyone's interested in learning more about you or Hyprfire, what should they do?
All right, so we got a website. Hit us up. I'm on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn. Go check out hyprfire.com and the Hyprfire LinkedIn account. We've got a lovely group of people that you can chat to if you're a medium-sized business trying to actually get some really good network visibility for something that doesn't require you to chuck an FTE on. At a cost that's wildly different compared to normal NDR. We're way more in the space where you'd actually be able to use it. One of the things that we love doing is helping businesses understand what's going on inside their environment and helping them get better proactively, and also helping them when things go wrong. So, if you're sitting there with your SIEM or your XDR or your Microsoft Sentinel, whatever, you've plugged all your stuff into it and you're like, what do I do now? Right? Or you're starting off and you're like, okay, where do I target my stuff? Those are both really great places that we can help, because we can point you out stuff that looks really weird and say, hey, that's probably a place to start.
Love it. Stefan, thank you so much for being on Weird Growth. It was a fascinating chat. I'm sure people learned a great deal, and really exciting to see what the future holds for you and Hyprfire, and congratulations on what you've done. It's just amazing.
Thanks very much for having me.
And thank you all for listening to Weird Growth. If you are listening to this, there is also 2 lovely video angles on YouTube. So please do check out YouTube and subscribe on there. If you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. It helps us a lot. But until next time, I'm Cam Sinclair from Ammo Marketing. This has been Weird Growth. Bye-bye.